Georgia, a small nation in the Caucasus region, finds itself at a crossroads facing a pivotal moment in its modern history. The country is grappling with a political crisis that has plunged it into uncertainty, with debates and discussions becoming increasingly heated. At the heart of the turmoil lies Georgia's ambition to join the European Union, a desire shared by a significant portion of its population, who see it as a path to greater prosperity and stability. However, the government's recent decision to suspend EU accession talks has ignited widespread protests and exposed deep divisions within Georgian society, with many feeling betrayed by their leaders. This decision has raised concerns about the future of democracy in Georgia and the potential for renewed Russian influence in the region, a fear that haunts many Georgians. The Georgian Dream Party, currently in power, argues that the suspension is temporary and necessary to address concerns raised by the European Parliament, insisting that it is a strategic pause rather than a retreat. The opposition, however, views it as a deliberate attempt to backtrack on the country's pro-Western path, accusing the government of undermining Georgia's European future. This difference in perspective reflects a broader ideological divide within Georgia, with the government accused of aligning itself more closely with Moscow, a move that many see as a threat to national sovereignty. The situation is further complicated by Georgia's history with Russia, particularly the 2008 war that resulted in the breakaway of two regions now under Russian control, a painful chapter that still resonates today. The current crisis represents a critical juncture for Georgia, a moment that will define its future direction and its place in the world. The outcome will have significant implications not only for the country's internal stability, but also for the geopolitical landscape of the region, influencing the balance of power in the Caucasus. As the world watches closely, the Georgian people find themselves caught in a struggle for their future, torn between their aspirations for European integration and the shadow of Russian influence, a dilemma that will shape the nation's destiny for years to come. The government's announcement regarding the suspension of EU accession talks acted as a catalyst, igniting a wave of protests across Georgia. This decision has struck a deep chord among the Georgian populace, who have long aspired to join the European Union, seeing it as a pathway to greater economic stability, democratic governance, and alignment with Western values. Tens of thousands have taken to the streets, their voices echoing with anger and frustration. The sheer scale of these protests is unprecedented, with people from all walks of life coming together in a unified call for change. These demonstrations, largely peaceful in nature, are a testament to the Georgian people's unwavering commitment to their European aspirations. The sight of Georgian and EU flags being waved side by side symbolizes their hope for a future that embraces European values of democracy, human rights, and rule of law. They view the government's decision as a betrayal of their trust and a direct assault on their democratic rights. The sense of betrayal is palpable, as many feel that their dreams of a better future are being undermined by political maneuvering. The protests, however, have been met with a heavy-handed response from the authorities. The government's approach has been criticized for its lack of dialogue and its reliance on force to suppress dissent. Riot police have been deployed in force, using tear gas, water cannons, and rubber bullets to disperse the crowds. These tactics have only served to inflame tensions further, leading to more confrontations and a growing sense of injustice among the protesters. There have been numerous reports of excessive force and arbitrary detentions, raising concerns about the government's respect for fundamental freedoms. Human rights organizations have documented instances of police brutality, calling for immediate investigations and accountability. The international community, including the United States and the European Union, has condemned the violence and urged restraint from all sides. Diplomatic pressure is mounting on the Georgian government to address the protesters' demands and to uphold democratic principles. Despite the crackdown, the protests show no signs of abating. The resilience and determination of the Georgian people are on full display as they continue to march and voice their demands for a democratic future. The situation on the ground remains tense, with fears that the situation could escalate further. The potential for more violence looms large as both sides dig in their heels. The government's attempts to portray the protests as orchestrated by foreign actors have been met with skepticism. Many see this narrative as a diversionary tactic aimed at shifting the focus away from the legitimate grievances of the people, with many viewing it as an attempt to deflect blame and discredit the genuine grievances of its people. The public's reaction has been one of disbelief and frustration, further fueling the protests. The resilience of the protesters underscores the depth of public sentiment against the government's decision and their unwavering commitment to a democratic future for Georgia. Their continued presence on the streets is a powerful reminder of their determination to see their country align with European values and principles. The Georgian Dream Party, led by Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili, finds itself under immense pressure. The government's decision to suspend EU accession talks has backfired spectacularly, alienating a significant portion of the population and emboldening the opposition. Garibashvili has defended the move, arguing that it was a necessary step to address concerns raised by the European Parliament regarding electoral reforms and judicial independence. However, the opposition has dismissed the government's explanations as disingenuous. They accuse Garibashvili of using the EU accession process as a bargaining chip in his dealings with Russia. The opposition, a fragmented but vocal force, has called for the government's resignation and fresh elections. They argue that the current government has lost its legitimacy and that only a new mandate can restore public trust. The government, however, has shown no willingness to step down. Instead, it has resorted to increasingly authoritarian tactics, cracking down on dissent and tightening its grip on power. This approach has only served to further inflame tensions, pushing the country deeper into crisis. The standoff between the government and the opposition has created a dangerous stalemate, with neither side willing to back down. The current political crisis in Georgia cannot be viewed in isolation. It is deeply rooted in the historical and geopolitical tensions that have long defined the region. It is inextricably linked to the country's complex and often fraught relationship with Russia, a relationship that has seen numerous conflicts and uneasy truces over the years. The 2008 war, which resulted in the breakaway of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, continues to cast a long shadow over Georgia's political landscape. The scars of this conflict are still visible today, both physically and in the national psyche. These two regions remain under Russian control, serving as a constant reminder of Russia's military and political influence in the region. The presence of Russian troops in these areas is a daily reality for many Georgians. Russia has been accused of exploiting the current crisis to advance its own interests in the region. Analysts suggest that Moscow sees the instability as an opportunity to reassert its dominance. Some analysts believe that Moscow is actively working to undermine Georgia's pro-Western orientation and pull it back into its sphere of influence. This tug-of-war between East and West is a central theme in Georgia's ongoing political drama. There are concerns that Russia could use the instability in Georgia as a pretext for further military intervention. The fear of an escalation is ever present, adding to the tension and uncertainty. The Kremlin has denied any involvement in the current crisis, accusing the West of interfering in Georgia's internal affairs. This narrative is part of a broader strategy to deflect blame and maintain a semblance of plausible deniability. However, Russia's rhetoric towards Georgia has hardened in recent months. The language used by Russian officials has become increasingly aggressive, signaling a potential shift in policy. Moscow has warned Tbilisi against pursuing NATO membership, threatening serious consequences if it continues on this path. The prospect of Georgia joining NATO is seen as a direct threat to Russian interests. The specter of Russian intervention looms large over the current crisis, adding another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. The international community watches closely, aware that any misstep could lead to a broader conflict. As tensions rise, various leaders and organizations have stepped forward to condemn the escalating violence. Calls for dialogue and peaceful resolution are growing louder, urging all parties to come to the table. The international community watches closely, hoping for a swift and peaceful end to the conflict. The future of Georgia hangs in the balance, and the road ahead remains uncertain. Georgia finds itself in a delicate position, trying to balance its relationships with both Russia and the West. This balancing act is critical for its political stability and economic growth. The country's leaders must navigate a complex web of alliances and rivalries, making strategic decisions that could shape Georgia's future for years to come. The current crisis in Georgia is multifaceted, involving political, economic, and social dimensions. To understand the potential outcomes, we must consider various scenarios. Will Georgia move closer to the West, embracing democratic values and institutions? Or will it succumb to Russian influence, compromising its sovereignty and democratic aspirations? The answers to these questions will significantly impact the region's stability. As Georgia navigates this period of uncertainty, the fight for its future intensifies. Citizens, politicians, and international allies all play pivotal roles in determining the country's path. The choices made today will resonate for generations, influencing Georgia's place in the world and the well-being of its people. This moment represents a critical test of democracy for Georgia. The nation stands at a crossroads, with its fate hanging in the balance. The resilience of its democratic institutions, the resolve of its people, and the support of the international community will all be crucial in shaping the outcome. The world watches closely as Georgia strives to uphold its democratic principles and secure a prosperous future.
So hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and let's turn the page on a new adventure together. Get ready to experience books like never before, only on VBook 360. Like, comment, and share to support the channel and keep the video magic alive. Thank you for stopping by. And remember, every video has a story, and every story deserves to be shared. See you in the next video.